today, after quite a while, is Pat Rodegast, and Emmanuel will be joining us as well.
Yes.
So welcome, Pat.
Thank you.
Thanks for stopping by. I think we did this maybe last autumn.
My gosh, that long ago?
I can't remember. It seems like you've
a long time.
Been away for a while.
I have.
And for people who have never joined us for this segment of the show, Pat channels Emmanuel. He's her best friend without a body.
Right.
And a very loving presence. And this type of thing has become, the whole concept of channeling, a little bit more familiar to people perhaps than when we first started. Do you remember the first time we were here, the whole production studio was filled up with people wanting to see what the heck was going to be going on in here?
Listen, when this all started, I didn't know what to put on my income tax, as to what I did.
So what did you do?
I think I wrote in very small letters, medium, because that, at least it wasn't illegal in Connecticut at that point, but it certainly wasn't accepted. It's really funny.
That's funny because, I think a year and a half ago I interviewed Ram Dass by telephone, and one of the questions that came to me was, when you're traveling, what do you have on your passport as occupation?
What did he say?
I don't remember. I've got a tape of it somewhere. I think I sent you a copy of that.
Okay, I have to look.
But anyway, so you've been doing this for 25 years?
Maybe 22. I don't know. I can't count. Yeah, a lot.
And it first happened as a result of your work with meditation.
Yes.
And you felt a certain energy or being or presence?
No, I just started to meditate, and after a very short time, whenever I closed my eyes, I saw light instead of dark. And, it got my attention. And then I started studying and reading and going to lectures and continuing to meditate. And after a couple of years, Emmanuel appeared. But before Emmanuel, I began to see things right away, because I'm visual. Whether people sense or hear or whatever.
And this has become your work and
it's my vocation and my avocation.
And from the time you first, after a while, you started to do personal readings for people.
Right.
And that got, after some years, out of hand with like a 3-year waiting list?
Well, actually, it was a year waiting list, and then one day Emmanuel said, "Well, now I'm going to show you my world." And then, as it so happened, I started just traveling, not by my own volition.
You mean physically traveling?
Yes, yes, physically traveling, and I've been doing that since. And I'm trying to think, as I'm talking to you, how many years that's been. Certainly well over 10 that I've been traveling around.
And doing workshops and lectures, and sometimes working with therapists and
sometimes
weekend surroundings.
That's right, doing intensives, 5 days. One is coming up in July in upstate New York in Phoenicia, 5-day intensive. It's incredible. And the fact that you can make enough money so you don't have to be a secretary anymore is awesome, while you're having a very good time and sitting in that wonderful shower of love that is Emmanuel. It's such a grace. I pinch myself. I really do.
But on the other side of that, I want to just point out to people that you're not breeding Arabian horses or anything.
No, I'm walking with children who are ill and, I'm living a human life. And I suppose it's all right. Given my preferences, I would lighten it up a little bit at this point, but it's okay.
Some people might know this already, but you have 2 books. The first one was self-published, I guess that would be.
Right.
And then Bantam picked it up,
right,
and then did the second book. What's the status of the third book?
It's supposed to be ready in early fall. And the title of it is Emmanuel's Book 3, What's an Angel Doing Here? And I like it. I mean, when I look at it now, having, been involved in the editing and stuff, and then distancing myself doing other things, I go back and I really like it. I mean, it's a neat book. Roland is designing it again.
And he did the artwork
yes,
on the first
on
show.
the other two, and he's just wonderful. So, and Bantam is publishing it again.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll see what's up for today on this sort of type of classroom on the air.
Okay, let me close my eyes. There will be quiet space on the air unless you want to hum, Ruth, until I get in touch with Emmanuel. I wonder how many times there's been silent space on the radio. Emmanuel's saying, I want you to hear the many, many variations, tones, and stories that exist within silence. For silence is never a space without sound. Silence is a space, if you will, of not remembered sound. And therefore, one hastens to adjust one's hearing, to alter one's perception so that there seems to be no vacuum there. There seems to be no emptiness. There seems to be no silence. Because the world in which you live is very frightened of hearing its own voice. Each human being lives within the boundaries of their own self-perception. That self-perception has been designed and monitored by the days of their human life. And in that monitoring, it has become comfortably familiar, sometimes blessedly so, most certainly. Until you come to be able to say, perhaps in the first years of your life, this is who I am. This is me, this is what I know, this is what I hear. This is what I think. This is what I believe. This is what I obey. This is how I respond. These are my reactions. And therefore then, in the familiarity of this, I feel safe. I don't know I'm safe, for there is never a moment when the human mind is completely at rest on that matter. But there is a sense of at least awareness that what is transpiring now has happened before. And clearly, if it has happened before, then one need not rush into a sense of emergency. And yet, is it not so? If your intellects were to be silenced now, in this very moment, if you were allowed to say, there is nothing I see, nothing I hear, nothing I know, what does fear say would become of you? Would you disappear? Would you fly into a million pieces? Would you enter into the maelstrom of chaos? What would transpire if silence, in its true sense, were allowed? Now one wants to ask, well, Emmanuel, what is silence in its true sense? What is the true sense of silence? And as I have said, it is the non-remembering that allows, therefore, for the distancing, so that the human being says, I can't hear anything, when of course the truth of the matter is, as long as you are present, whether it be in your human form or whether it be in the universe at large, there is not only sound, though that may seem to be a difficult concept. There is not only sound, there is absolute and profound presence, for that is who you are. And when I say presence, I do not mean unaware presence. I mean the presence of the angel, the presence of the self that can say yes, yes, yes to it all, because there is an essence that knows how to say yes. Now, what am I leading to? Is there some purpose for my beginning with the subject of silence? Yes, of course there is. The endless cacophony of contradictory, conflicting, screaming, tortured voices in your world has rendered you all into a posture of deafness so that you cannot hear the voice of love, but only the moan and anguish of the results of fear. The human race stands at the threshold of a most wondrous challenge. And the challenge is this: what do I hear? What do I listen to? What do I believe? What do I follow? I want to be very clear. I do not mean that if you are willing to hear the more subtle whispers of love, that you disregard the screams of pain. You do not. And this is where most certainly the exchange of concept becomes difficult. For is it not so, when there is a cry, when there is a weeping, when there is a sound of the firing of a gun, then all the tension is riveted on that. And all desire, understandably, in human terms, is to render it harmless. How does one render the world harmless in the name of love? I offer this as a question. I don't promise there be a formula answer. But those of you who are kind enough to be listening, I offer that to you in this moment for consideration. For it is indeed your world. And I am not shaking my finger at you in a scolding way, saying, well then, you created it, you must find a way to solve it. The world does not require solving, but most urgently, it requires loving. Now, if one is faced with disaster, or what seems to promise to be disaster, how does one in that moment of great stress choose love? It seems to be an absurd thing to say. For the definition of love has been so softened, has been so yielded to the requirement of the mind, that when I say love, it is not heard in the manner in which I am expressing it. How does one then, with the limited vocabulary that is available between us, how does one say to you, love is not simply, though it is not a simple matter, the opening of the heart and caring. Love is not even simply compassion. For the vocabulary, again, with which we are limited, renders compassion more passive than active. Each one of you in your lives have, in the name of pure and wondrous love, moved with alacrity, become, for some of you, extremely aggressive. Most certainly you have not withered and found yourself hiding in a corner. Nor, and this is most important, have you obeyed the rules and regulations that have been presented to you throughout your lives as the performance of the meaning of love. What I am saying here is this: though the mind cannot consider all of the aspects of love as I am in my intent presenting them to you, I urge you to have faith that within your own being shines the memory of the perfect love of which I speak. That in those moments when that love is called forth in your life, it will be there. Perhaps you are looking back at your histories. Perhaps you are saying, no, there were times when really, Emmanuel, there was something needed of me, and I was not able to give it. Or I was too frightened to give it, or I was too deafened by the sounds of habit to even realize what was needed at that moment. Yes, of course, this is true. For you come indeed to wear the costumes of the human world, not to remain outside the drama, but to fully and completely enter into it. And at the same time, no matter how faulted you may judge yourself to be, the essence of your being is perfect love. That is who you have always been. And nothing upon planet Earth or in the heavens around it can in any manner alter the essence of who you are. And as I have said, and it bears repeating, when that perfect love is called forth in your life, in its own name, it will be there. Do begin to have faith in who you really are. When fear enters your lives, when you are very young, it comes through the open doorway that invites, certainly, a sense of identity that is not your own. To be human requires a great deal of the angel. To set aside remembering, at least for the necessary duration, until the process of entering into illusion is complete. To certainly at one moment in the very early times of your life, to deliberately choose to walk in the darkness, to align yourself with those dear human beings whose call you heard in the heavens, and to enter again through the birthing process, to become what, you say? Another victim, another casualty, another member of the walking wounded? No, not at all. Though the casualties of life seem to be evident all around you, they are the mask of forgetting. They are the illusion. Now, if I may continue for a moment, when I speak of illusion, I do not mean to dismiss your human world as something trivial or something not worthy of profound attention, indeed awe. When I say illusion, I am not speaking of a child's game. I'm speaking of an angel's commitment, and that is a vastly different thing. You enter into the darkness of forgetting, and within the realm of forgetting, that darkness is very real. I am not saying evil, for I know no such definition. But forgetting, yes. The darkness that comes with forgetting, yes. The wrenching loneliness, yes. The despair, yes. And from that despair, from that heartbreak, what can possibly erupt except distortion? Rage, jealousy, guilt, fear, in all of its manifested forms. And so you come, you enter into the illusion, and you say, well, if this isn't real, what am I doing here? And the question is well taken. What are you doing here? Why, you are the angel of light, don't you remember? You are that dear, dear being of perfect essence that heard from the pain of the human world the call to come forth, to enter again, to bring the light of the truth of who you really are. That is what you have all done. Have you masked it? Of course. Have you shrouded it behind the performances, the behaviors you were taught are essential to your well-being? Yes, indeed you have. But that has not extinguished your light. Nothing can. And so, is it not time to begin to remember? Remember your beauty, remember your goodness, remember your grace, remember your power. Remember the purpose for this journey. You did not come just to forget and to wander the streets of your cities in terror or to walk your country roads in loneliness. You came to bring the light, that can only be brought with your willingness to remember. Now, what does that mean? Willingness to remember. It does not mean you discard your human life, dear no. It means that you embrace it with the willingness of the Creator as well as the created. There is a language that must be taught. It is not the language of linear concept. That is essential, most useful within the framework of illusion. But there is a greater language. Perhaps someone who is listening will be willing to begin the formulation of the dictionary of that language. It speaks to greater things than the narrowing concept of familiar definition. It speaks not just to light as something that illuminates certain restricted areas of darkness, but it speaks to a greater light, an eternal light, one that embraces all things, all horror, all pain, all distress, all forgetting of any kind. There is within the essence of all suffering the light of the eternal self. I know, simply to say that does not in any manner seem to alleviate the suffering of the world. And who does not want to alleviate the suffering of the world? And yet, who is to teach that? Who is to bring the light if it is not you? We in spirit can speak, and indeed we have and we do and we will. And yet it is you who stand upon the planet, who have committed yourselves, if you will, and I mean that not harshly but truthfully. You have committed yourself to the wonder and the holy purpose of your journey, which is to transform darkness into light, forgetting into remembering, not by the waving of a magic wand, not by some strange elixir, but by the willingness to be present as who you really are. And when I say who you really are, I do not suggest that you don the costume of an angel or wear an eternal smile. No, who you are is much more than that. Any symbol of angelic nature must be set aside, for symbols have been constructed by intellect, and intellect by its very nature limits what truly is. Now let your heart simply begin to dance your life. Moment by moment, be here. And you say, what part of me? And I will say, all of you. Leave nothing out. Leave not out the anger or the pain or the distress or the vengeful. For if all of the sense of self is gathered into the moment of now, then the moment of now is able to reveal the greater self. If you shun or set aside any portion of who you are, you judge it, if you scold it, if you hope to remove it, amputate it from your being, then all you cause is profound distraction and personal pain. So the first thing that I would suggest to be aligned with is that wondrous self-loving yes, that in this moment can embrace the total self with absolute faith that who I say you are is real. Take a moment now, whether you are in your cars or in your home or sitting outside in the pleasant weather, take a moment to imagine what it would be like if you really did absolutely know that you are a holy being of divine purpose. Let not one doubt enter your mind for as long as that is possible. And sit with that wondrous experience, familiar most certainly to all of you when you allow it to enter into its fullness, for that indeed is who you have always been and will continue to be. And in so allowing that, to recognize that in that fullness, in that holy now, there is an entirely different reality, is there not? You do not despise the human, you embrace it. You do not judge your errors, you see them not as errors, but as necessary steps to the moment of remembering. That is not philosophical debate, it is heart's language. You will see, you will see. And having found that one moment of complete self-embrace, will you ever need another? Will there ever be a time when you won't know where to go? When you find yourself lost and wondering, weeping, mourning the world's suffering, can you not see that this sanctuary is there for you, no matter where you are, no matter what is taking place? Is that escape? No. For escape and remembering are entirely two different things. You did not come to escape life. You came to enter into it 112%, if you will. And in that entering into it, you bring not only the human self, but the remembering self. And I cannot tell you, and I need not, for you will discover this, you will experience this as you go, what miracles take place, miracles of transformation, miracles of gifting, miracles of healing, when you allow this blending, this marriage between the human self and the divine essence of your being. And so, we return to silence. What is in the silence? Both, what are you looking to hear? What are you afraid you will hear? What has fear taught you not to see? What has forgetting told you not to remember? And then, be silent and soften around the armoring of your life. For only with that softening can the greater truth reach you. Is that not what you have hoped for all your life? That there would be that moment when the prison bars melt, and the greater truth that deeply in your heart you all remember, that greater truth can indeed come to you in its entirety as you still firmly walk the human earth.
You're tuned to WPKN in Bridgeport, 89.5 FM, and you're listening to Pat Vertigast and Emmanuel. And there was a thought that came to me while Emmanuel was speaking. I think he had said something about not believing that there was evil.
He doesn't use that word.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And what came to mind, I guess there's been a lot of information for people out there about some of what happened in World War II with the Holocaust Museum that just opened, and this new movie called Schindler's List, and D-Day that celebration too. Yeah, and that seems like the only word I could think about what happened for something such as the Holocaust. And I feel like Emmanuel would say, well, that was a very deep forgetting, but it seems like that's almost not enough.
I understand.
I mean, I don't know what he'll say.
Yeah, I know. As Pat, I look even now, not even back there, but you look at Rwanda, and it's hard to believe that these are human beings, in my definition of human being. You know. Well, let's see. By the way, do you explain to people who's snoring?
Well, when Emmanuel said, now we'll go back to silence, I thought, well, Pat doesn't hear this. And I thought if he were right near my foot, I was going to give him a gentle nudge. Yeah, that's Freddie the Bulldog.
Okay. Emmanuel was saying, let us begin at the top of the ladder, if we might. Let us consider, as we have been discussing, that you have just entered into the concept of becoming human. That you are, if you will, and I do call upon your imaginations, hovering above the human planet. And you see it just as you perceive it now, certainly more clearly than human eyes and ears and consciousness can perceive it. And you see both areas of extreme light, wondrous gentleness, deep and profound loving people, heroism, tenderness, caring, wondrous beauty. And in certain areas you see enclaves of profound cruelty. Cruelty is what it is. It is, it seems, the final separation between self and other. For is that not what horrifies you so? How can one human being inflict upon another such things? How can there be this vituperous performance? How can there be such hate? And so you ask, Emmanuel, is that not evil? Does that not go beyond forgetting? But let us play with this a minute, if we might. When we say forgetting, we are not speaking of just a child forgetting the sequence of numbers. We are speaking of a forgetting so profound. And each of you have in moments touched this, where there is no memory of oneness, where the experience of separation, which is so painful, so agonizing, and yet the necessary beginning of your journey, remains open and bleeding, if you will, where there seems to be no recourse, but to totally embrace the illusion that you are alone, and that every other, what seemed to be human being, has little, if any, relationship to you at all. Profound childhood trauma creates this, most certainly. Certainly it becomes a psychotic state, an hypnotic state, when there are many who are gathered with the belief, whether it be expounded by a leader or whether it be a mutual agreement amongst the members, such as when young people run rampant in the streets, believing that they, under the banner of their own name, hold a different sense of humanness than anyone else. When the forgetting of the purpose is so deep, then the separation seems to be a chasm, an abyss. And across that abyss, it seems, no decency can reach. No compassion. Nothing but madness. And indeed, in the true sense of the word, it is madness. For madness means that you lose all consciousness of other, that you become so engrossed, so narcissistic, if you will, in your own agony, your own rage, your own defense against whatever pain you may be feeling in that desperate loneliness, that you strike out, believing that everyone is the enemy. Excuse me. Is that evil? What would be the definition that would render it evil? That is, it has a false beginning, that it is not of God, that it is somehow truly separated from the initial eternal oneness? How can that be? The very definition of oneness in its truer meaning is that there is no separation. There is no separation. As the forgetting becomes more and more profound, the separation becomes more real in its experience. And in your essence, you cannot live in that separation. It is alien, it is impossible. And yet the human experience seems, does it not, to continually point, almost unrelentingly, to the illusion that there you are in your body, and there's everybody else in theirs, and there is no family. There is no trustworthiness. There is no need to regard another as you would yourself. The 10 Commandments were very wisely given, were they not? Whatever your opinion of the source may be, the teaching is profound. Love your neighbor as yourself.
Elena, someone burned
as yourself.
With you inside.
If you have forgotten who you are, if you have crowded your self-identity with blame and guilt and remorse and hate, then why would you not take a gun and kill another? Is that not what ultimately you have done to yourselves? There are many, many teachings. I will not certainly go into all of them. There has been one that has become almost trite in its repetition, and that is that the world is a mirror, that everyone within your human life is a mirror for you. How you see them is really how you see yourself. Consider that. Oh, I know, you say, but I haven't taken a knife and cut a child to death. No, you haven't. No, you haven't, and you never would. And yet you see the horror. What do you do with it? What do you do with it? Do you want to cut it up? Do you want to punish it as it has in its cruelty caused your heart to hurt? How does one turn the other cheek when it seems as though the violence is so untenable? A difficult question, as I have said. You have all chosen to walk a profound journey, one that will lead you, I promise, back home to the light. But is there evil, which was the original question? No, there's not. Because the definition of evil is that it is separated from God, from the oneness. That cannot be. Of course, I want to ask, then what do we do about it? You know, I want that to be my question right now, right? Well, he's saying nothing and everything, my dear. You bless it, you pray for it, you embrace it, you do not applaud it, you do not allow it if it is within your capacity to stop it. And you deny fear the pleasure of taking over your heart. I know fear has taught you all. What good is an open and loving heart? Does it stop a bullet? Does it save a life? Does it feed a starving child? Does it awaken someone who is on a murderous rampage? There is no way to prove what I am going to say, but the truth of it is that yes, it does.
Well, perhaps we should open the phone lines to people.
Okay.
If you wish to pose a comment or question for Emmanuel to address, that's hopefully not of too much of a I can't think of the word. Not too personal, but something that would hopefully have application for everyone, although sometimes Emmanuel just has a way of making that happen anyway. But if you would like to phone in with a question or comment, we're at area code 203-576-4540. And Pat and Emmanuel are here live today. And there we probably go. Sometimes he sounds like a pigeon cooing. And then there reaches a point where someone described it as sounding like pasta boiling. Oh, that's not for us.
Okay.
No. Okay, 576-4540. If you would like to speak with Emmanuel with a a question or a comment. And again, you're attuned to WPKN in Bridgeport, 89.5 FM, listener-supported radio.
And do you have a question, Ruth?
Well, I do, but sometimes what happens is while we're waiting for the calls, we get into something, and then someone's on hold for a really long time, and so I was just going to just put it out there. Okay.
Right, all right.
Hello, WPKN, you're on the air.
Hi, Ruth. I have a question on how does one deal with the feelings of turmoil that I get anyway when I hear about the Bosnian crisis and Haiti and all, and where people are tearing themselves apart around the world, and then you hear the news, the president going through feelings of, well, we should go in, we shouldn't go in, we should send in troops, and we shouldn't. How does one deal with all this chaos and our own feelings of maybe guilt for not being able to do anything about it? You know what I mean?
Right. Okay, do you wish to stay on the line or just listen at home?
No, I think I'll just hang up.
Okay, great. Thanks for calling.
Bye.
Yeah, that's a tricky one, because there are some times when I'm not feeling, I guess, strong enough or not in a great mood where I can't even deal with the news that's just happening every day.
Yeah, it's a heartbreak. Okay. Emmanuel says as Patricia is climbing up the ladder to get beyond her own suffering and her own opinions and her own responses to the world.
Oh, you're formal now.
He says pleasantly so. Let us come to a point where there is a plateau of understanding. Only intellectual, of course, but that can be a beginning if you do not trust it to take you all the way. The beginning is this, that there is such a thing within the framework of illusion as time and space, that as you have received the news upon the air, it is already past the moment of now, and it has already in some manner resolved itself, that what you receive, though it feels immediate, must be released at the moment of receiving. Now, am I telling you then to disbelieve what you hear? Yes, I am. I am suggesting that you disbelieve the presentation. Now, hear me out. I am in no manner criticizing the media. They do as excellent a job as time and space allows. Now, what I am saying is this, that the sense of helplessness, the sense of despair, when you look for a firm and concise response that will promise to bring to an end the human suffering that has been brought to your attention, and you find it wanting, you perceive that there is, if you will, non-decisive response. What do you do with your rage? What do you do with your heartbreak? What do you do with your despair? You take it, if you will, dear ones, to the altar of your life. I say this recognizing that the mind says that is too passive. So you and I must begin to reach a new understanding of the power of worship, the power of love. Again, and it bears repeating perhaps countless times, for you have heard it so spoken in the opposite as many times, that the power of love is very real. And if you, in that moment of despair, open your heart, and in whatever manner presents itself to you, what feels as truth to you, not as behavior, but as truth, that if you will, send your love without judgment, try it into the areas of suffering, and know that the leap of faith that you have come to make in a world that denies anything that cannot be proven in the laboratories, of science, that you, in that leap of faith, know that you are doing more than you could possibly do. If you were the leader of your country, if you were the general in the army, if you were the head of the peacekeeping forces, or if you were a loving hand touching the suffering human being that you pray for. This is a time, as I have said, of altering definition. And that does not mean that you pretend it's all right, because of course it's not. Within the illusion, it's not all right. Beyond it, which you cannot know, it is perfect. But that definition does not affect your human response. I only say that to you to plant it in the center of your heart, so that when your heart breaks, the remembering will be there for you to find. And beyond that, beyond your loving, beyond your remembering and the touching of your compassion, what else can be done wherever compassion leads you? Wherever love says it wants to go. But be very sure, and this is the angel's responsibility, you, the human being, angel, be very sure it is not fear that's calling you. Be very sure you are listening to the voice of love. That is your task. And you say, what can love say? Love can say many things. It can say all of the opportunities that exist upon the human planet. It might say you will write a letter, you will make a phone call, you will volunteer, you will travel to Washington. You will, in some manner, create some festive device by which people will be very glad to come and donate their money, and then you will pinpoint where that money must go to save those who are suffering. You may lead a parade down the street. You may find yourself forced by the definition of your loving to present yourself as a public figure. There is no way of knowing, and this is part of the adventure of your human world. There is no way of knowing where the next step will call you if you listen clearly to the voice of love. There is every reason to know or believe that you know what fear is going to say, for you have listened to that voice all your life and you know it very well, all of you. What is possible, what is not, what is hopeless, what is hope-filled, what is catastrophic, and what maybe has a hope of healing. And on goes the opinion of the mind, which formulates your response to your world, which creates for you your pain and despair. And so I offer you, indeed I urge you, to take the next step on your path, to listen, to truly listen, not just to think about listening, but to truly listen to what your heart tells you. And then, dear, dear friend, follow it.
Okay, we have another call. Hello, WPKN, you're on the air.
Hello?
Yes, you're on the air.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize that. Fantastic program. For about 10 years now, I am in communication with my angel. And hearing your angel, Emmanuel, is the first time I found someone else that has my experience. Emmanuel's message is full of love and guidance. And I would like to hear more from him. I missed the beginning of your program because I just turned it on. And I need help in understanding my abilities to talk to entities beyond this reality. Can you help me?
Yeah.
Can you recommend a book?
Well, this is Pat. I'll recommend 2 books. Emmanuel's book 1 and 2. And the third one is coming out in the fall. And that might be helpful. But let's see what Emmanuel wants to say.
Do you wish to stay on the line, or did you want to listen from where you are?
I'll get off the line so someone else could call in.
Oh, okay. Well, I wasn't sure if you were going to dialogue back and forth.
Oh, okay, yes. I'll stay.
Okay. Emmanuel said, well, we've caught you at a good time, have we not? Here you are, listening to what apparently, most certainly, is and has become more and more a familiar arena of human experience for you. And you have touched the realm that promises that you are not just this packaged human being that stops at the end of your fingers and the top of your head and the end of your toes, but that you do indeed exist beyond what seems to be the sternly designed reality of the human world. And so, what a blessed time this is. It does indeed, does it not, feel strange to tell of this? You say, well, I hear angels, I think I hear angels. Perhaps I'm not hearing angels. Perhaps it's my imagination. Perhaps I am mad. No, I'm not mad. I hear angels. And on, of course, it goes. And so it is a great comfort, most certainly, to tune in something as phlegmatic, if you will, as ordinary as a radio, and hear that there is a being without a physical body that is speaking through a human being, just as you are, and saying things that you know in your heart to be absolutely true. The journey is not so lonely, is it? Once there is that connection made, though do not hope, dear one, that this connection will in any manner divert you from your human path. It will not. You have come to walk the human path most explicitly and to bring the remembering with you. Now, angels walk with all of you. And I want to say that again. Angels walk with all of you, whether you have experienced that, whether you have listened and heard, whether you have felt the touch, or just the profound moments of knowing. Whether these things be true for you or not, they are real. And I find great joy in saying that to you. I urge you, as you feel more and more comfortable, dear lady, to remind others as well that they are not alone. For as you have heard, the most horrifying experience on the human journey is that dreadful moment when separation comes, as it inevitably must, for the beginning of the journey. To exist, when you realize that you are no longer an angel in the oneness, but that you are a child in the separation. And from that moment on, the call of the heart is to touch the oneness again. Why do you think you love so many people? Why do you think a child's eyes are always open, seeing the light? Why do you think no matter what abuse happens to a child, their heart cannot close to those whose call for love brought them from the oneness into the world again? And so wherever there is pain and darkness, bring your remembering. You have a wondrous, wondrous journey ahead of you. It does not mean you force, for no one can force remembering. No one can force healing. No one can force anything at all. For force is the motive of fear, not of love. But to light the light in a darkened room, that is the blessing you bring. However that be done, let it be done gently. However you experience within your own dear private life these beings who touch you, welcome them wholeheartedly. Do not expect the intellect ever to register absolute satisfaction. For the intellect, the mind, cannot embrace what is greater than itself. And the mind is the vehicle for the human journey, and essentially so. But it is not in any manner designed to remember fully and completely, nor to utilize that remembering within the framework of its official duty. But you do, of course, have intuition, you have a heart. And let that be the doorway through which the world of angels speaks. Let it come to you as it will. Allow yourself only this, that in the moment of now, you have a choice to trust or not to trust, to choose love or to choose fear. And the choice is inevitably yours. And I must add that that choice is never taken away from you. It is never taken away from any of you. For is that not the journey? Choose fear and you enter in to the forgetting, into the darkness, if you will. Choose love and you are in the moment of remembering and you have brought the light. And is there any way frightened mind, an exhausted human being will say, is there any way that we can just say, all right, from here to the end of time, I choose love? No, there's not. No, there's not. But I want you to know that your essence has already made that choice. Indeed, there is no other for your essence. Your essence is the perfect love your humanness hopes to choose often enough to make a difference in the world.
Thank you, Emmanuel. You have helped me. You have reinforced me. And I will see you on the other side. Thank you, ma'am. May I please have who is the author of the book?
Emmanuel, and it's edited by myself, Pat Rodegas, and Judith Stanton.
Okay, thank you very much.
It's on Bantam Books.
Thank you very, very much.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.
We have another call. Hello, you're on the air.
I'd like to ask, how do you accept a suicide when you hear about it? Especially if you know that person was a young person, and you just wonder, how do you accept it when you are touched by it?
Yeah, right. Emmanuel is saying the difficulties in the human world seem overwhelmingly numerous, do they not? How does one accept the fact that someone so young, whom you with greater experience recognize have a full and abundant life to live, how can one accept a rightness about their ending of their life, of their simply saying, no, I'm not going to stay here. In this moment it is too painful. In this moment it is too terrifying. As with all things, bear with me, I fear I sound repetitious, but there is nothing to be done about it. With all things, there is the moment of truth. Do you weep? Of course you do. That does not mean you do not believe. It means that in your humanness you know the pain of that dear, dear, sweet child. And it means that in your weeping with them and for them, that your heart is open and you touch them with compassion. Never allow your hearts to close, no matter how painful the circumstance. I know that seems like a very cruel thing to say at times, and yet it is the only way. It is the only way to bring hope back into a hopeless circumstance, or light back into a very, very dark circumstance. By keeping your heart open, you allow heaven to enter into the human plane. When you close your heart, there is no way for the light to get through, don't you see? It is your loving that brings the light. Now, how do you respond to a suicide, particularly a young suicide? With tears, with anguish, with despair, with compassion, with hope, with love, and with faith.
Thank you. 576-4895, area code 203, if you wish to address Emmanuel with a question or a comment. In one of the last responses, Emmanuel was talking about healing, and I'm wondering what his definition of healing is.
I'll ask him.
For some people, it's, I don't know, one therapy or another, or one thing won't work and something else will, but what really is the definition of moving that energy?
Yes, he's saying, what is the ultimate goal? If someone is healed, what are you saying? Or what am I saying, which is your question. When I say healing, what do I mean? I mean something uniquely different for every human being. Each one of you, let me explain, walks your own unique path. And for one, a healing would be escape into death and home. And for another, a healing would be a mystical turning around, and 24 hours later, all the stress is gone from the body. But what is healing, you say, Emmanuel? In a generalized definition, I can say only this: it is harmony. Harmony within the body, and a harmony within the consciousness that's living in harmony with the human life. Now, you say, that brings in many, many aspects. Oh, yes, it does. In fact, there can be a healing at the doorway of death, as you know. And the outraged mind says, what good is a healing then? Oh, it is of such immense award and benefit that words cannot begin to express it. It is lifetimes lived seeking that moment of knowing. It is the struggle of centuries coming to the moment of balance. Within the human illusion, it is, in the vocabulary that I have been using today, it is the bringing of the perfect light into the arena of the perfect darkness. Can't you see? All that it requires is that moment of light, and all things are healed. All things are healed. And can it also be the removal of a cyst? Can it also be the easing of a headache? Can it also be the stopping of a degenerative disease? Of course it can. But do not limit healing to such narrow scope. Now, even as we speak, mind, fear says, well then, are you saying, Emmanuel, nothing can really be healed, and we have to just pretend that it's all right no matter what happens? No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying remember as illness strikes, and it must, for you have physical bodies from time to time, and inevitably, ultimately, of course, death will come, for there is no other way to release yourselves from the bondage of the human form. And yet, perceive what is transpiring in a 360-degree arena. Do not allow fear to focus you on what seems to be a dysfunction, for I promise you that one dysfunction, if it is fully focused on, will appear to be the entire world. And it will appear as though no such thing as healing is possible. And if that belief is present, that is simply another portion of the degenerative disease. Don't you see? Faith is required always, but not blind or desperate faith, but aware, conscious, alert, human faith. Look around. What do you see? An illness comes, and there is great change. What does that change bring? Consider it as your own blessing, both for you, to you, and from you. You who are ill, that hear my voice, do not focus on your illness. Do not take identity from it, neither ignore it, for it is part of the package of the journey, or the soul would not have brought it along. But find a place for it where it does not imbalance your life. Remember, you are physical, you are emotional, you are mental, you are spiritual, you are intuitive, you are all things. Everything that stands before your eyes is created by you. You are a dreamer, and in your dreaming you create. You are a pilgrim, and in your pilgrimage you bring the light. You are all things, the forgetter, the rememberer. Allow, soften, make porous the definition of your illness, and you will find healing takes place. Healing, dear Ruth, takes place, and no healing will be the same as another.
Thank you. We have a call.
Yeah.
Which one is it? Oh, here. Hello, WPKN. You're in the air.
Yes, hi. I have a question for Emmanuel.
Yes.
I just found out that I'm pregnant, and I'd like to know what is the very best thing I can do for this child as I bring it into this world. I'll listen through the radio. Thank you.
He's saying thank you. Thank you for many things, several at least that I will mention. Thank you for allowing me to speak with you. Thank you for being willing to be the vehicle of this dear angel, whom you have known through centuries, as you are already intuitively aware. And thank you for the sweet question. For it is a valuable question, indeed it is an essential question. Now, particularly in this time of your planet's evolution. Notice I did not say your planet's imminent demise. Your planet's evolution, and we will speak of that in a moment, perhaps. What is the best thing to do for this child that is now nestling within your body as the angel goes back and forth, constructing the perfect body, the perfect personality, the perfect fail-safe system that will serve the perfect journey of the perfect soul? Well, there are many gifts. The most valuable one, of course, you knew I would say, is simply to love this child. Love this child, absolutely. Trust this child, absolutely. And that cannot be done with great ease until you remember who you are, until you come to terms with your own worthiness, your own capacity for excellence, your own perfection. But one cannot love another more than one loves oneself, even though it seems to be contradicted in many areas of your life. I assure you it's not true. The doorway of loving, the capacity to love, is in its present volume, if you will, and quality, because of how you allow yourself to walk with the love that belongs to you. And so, from now until you come to term, until the child is born, make it a constant practice to fall in love with who you are. And in so doing, you will be preparing to greet that child with light and remembering, love, gentleness, caring, and courage. And what more can a child ask for? A child such as this. What more can this child ask for except to be welcomed into the arms of a remembering parent rather than one who is racked with fear and pain and wandering in the darkness of forgetting?
And don't forget the folic acid. we have another call. Hello, WPKN, you're on the air.
Hi, I'm calling to ask Emmanuel what he suggests for someone who is ministering to people who are dying in a hospice kind of situation.
Mm-hmm. He's saying, yes, indeed. I would be delighted to tell you what I suggest.
Okay.
I suggest that you recognize that you are participating in an eventual celebration, which is of the vastest and most joyous kind, and that those who stand timidly at the doorway of their own physical departure are those who can be led most gently to that blessed doorway through which they have walked countless times, and that your presence there, in your caring but not your fear, in your gentleness but not your timidity, in your celebration, though certainly not a hard-hearted humor, that you in that moment stand as the light of remembering. Now, what that does is demand of you, of course, does it not? For you would not have chosen to walk such a walk. It demands of you that you do indeed honor your remembering, that you listen, that you look, that you become alerted, not anxiously so, but lovingly so, to the presence of angels. The presence of angels are everywhere, but most pointedly, most strongly, if you will, to human observation, in such a place as hospice. Why? Because we promise you at the moment of your birth or shortly before that we will walk with you through life. And at the moment of your departure, we will be there and we will embrace you and we will escort you jubilantly home to your homecoming celebration. We promise you this, and therefore then the gathering begins. Oh yes, the angels say. And now we can go and bring that dear friend back home for celebration. Perhaps for remembering, perhaps for tender reminiscence, certainly for reunion of all love that has ever been, whether it be this life or all of the lives continuous, for most of you do indeed walk with those with whom you have walked before, and inevitably you must at least leave their physical representation upon planet Earth as you leave, as you come home. And so death is to be seen in such holy work as a holy thing, not as a failure, as you know, not as a failure at all, but as the inevitable gift of self to self. Who would want to stay in a human body forever? Okay.
Thanks for your call.
You're welcome.
576-4895 or 576-4540 if you have a question or comment for our friend Emmanuel. And you're tuned to listener-supported WPKN in Bridgeport, 89.5 FM. We should have Emmanuel come up in October if you're around, before we have to fundraise to get everyone in the mood.
I'm not going to be here. I'm going to be in England and Italy.
Wow, doing work?
Yeah. Isn't that fun?
Yeah, so you really do get around.
I know. You know where I may go this year, Ruth? Crete.
Oh, you like Greece.
I love Greece. I've never been to Crete, and I'm so excited for a workshop.
Wow.
Maybe a year from this September.
Well, and they go by like blinks.
It always does. Anyhow, that's an exciting thing. Yeah. Other than that, it's around the country. Yeah.
Do you have... You never have a schedule with you, but I'm wondering if people want to catch a workshop or a lecture that might be in our listening range, if you can think offhand of anything that's coming up.
What they can do is to send a stamped self-addressed envelope to 26 Flat Rock Drive in East Connecticut, 06612. And I will send the schedule for August, September, October, November, December, at the beginning of July.
Okay.
Yeah. Otherwise, there's the intense 5-day intensive in Phoenicia, New York.
That's a commitment, though. That's a 5-day
That's
therapy
a 5-day.
thing.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's not just therapy. You know, it's a manual. It's Tai Chi. It's massage. It's a whole bunch of stuff. It's fun. Yeah. And I'm trying to think. Vermont next weekend.
Hey, we might be in Vermont next weekend.
Really?
Yeah.
Why don't you come? I'll tell you where I'm going to be. I can't remember now, but I'll tell you. I'll call you.
We might be seeing the cutest little redheaded niece.
Oh, that's good. Okay.
Okay, but and if people didn't get that address down, they can write to you, care of here, and I'll make sure that you
good.
get it.
Thank you.
Hello, WPKN. You're on the air.
Hi, Ruth. This is Reverend Rick.
Hi, Reverend Rick.
How are you?
Good.
I want to talk to Emmanuel.
Okay.
Or I actually want to talk with her.
Okay.
All right?
With him.
You there?
Pat's a her.
Him? I don't know.
A him.
Oh, I don't know. Go ahead. It doesn't matter.
Here's a scoop. I've been a minister of a difficult church for 3 years. Now the church is coming around. We're starting to see some momentum, some spiritual healing, and some energizing. But my marriage is sorely pressed. And I don't know at this point what to do. I'd rather be married to my wife. So,
Emmanuel's saying, isn't it interesting that the world seems to present the illusion that one cannot have it all?
oh, yes.
That somehow there must be heart-rending choice. And for you, an extremely difficult choice. Or how can you turn your back on your commitment to either? To your heart's love or to your heart's love? And so, let us examine this a moment. If we were to take the two pieces, the marriage, the church, and stitch them up in the middle so that they formulate one piece, what would you make of it? Would you make a temple? Would you make an altar? Would you make a cradle? Would you make a costume? This is not for you to answer immediately, most certainly, but to inwardly consider. Now, I know it seems as though I am moving away from the central point of pain. My marriage is dissolving as the church seems to be healing. I don't want the church to grow at the expense of my marriage, and I certainly don't want my marriage to be fruitful at the expense of the church. Is there a way to bring it together? Perhaps the question could be reworded as this: am I big enough? Am I vast enough to embrace both, to give both what they need? Can I create a day of 48 hours rather than 24? And of course, the matter at hand seems to be narrowly confined to what the world says is the nature of time and space. But you and I are aware that there is variation of a vast nature in the nature of time and space. So, do I have a formula for you? I do not, but I have suggestions. The first is that every morning as you awake, that you ask your heart, if all things were possible, what would I do today? And write it down. It does not have to be obedient. It does not have to be in any manner moralistic. It just has to be what your heart would do if all things were possible. Now, as you write it down, of course, you will begin to edit. Don't do that. Let this be vocabulary from the heart. And then you will walk your day as you have and you will and you must. And the next morning, without reading what the heart said of the day before, without any attempt at remembering it, as you awaken, ask yourself that question again and write it down. Allow this to continue on a consistent basis for perhaps 3 months. At the end of that, you will have the answers to everything. Perhaps the answers will evolve and begin to shine through in 5 days. And you will say, now I have it, that's what I'm going to do. And I would urge you to resist the temptation to solve it too quickly. For the essence of your difficulty is not that there needs to be a choice, but that there is a belief that there needs to be a choice. And somewhere in the wisdom of your deepest heart, you have the answer. And if you will allow yourself to invite your heart in before the mind becomes busy, before habit overtakes you, you will find that in a very short time, there will be the brilliant writing across the sky that will bring all things into oneness. I want to say something else to you. You have much nobility in you. I do not flatter you. You have much nobility in you, and you have deep and profound dreams. Let them not be limited by what seems to be possible. And I want to say that again. Let your dreams not be limited by what seems to be possible. And therefore this homework, if you will, that I have assigned you will be much benefit in the discovering of the vaster purposes of your life. You did not come to hold the walls apart so that they do not collapse, nor did you come to tear your heart to pieces by difficult or impossible choices. You came for much more, much vaster, much more self-loving purpose than that. And you cannot think about it, so do not let your mind lead you. Let your heart lead you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
We have another call. Hello, WPKN, you're on the air.
Yes, I have a question for Emmanuel.
Okay.
There have been many prophecies of a cosmic event that will be experienced by this planet, by the world's people, that will lead to a spiritual reawakening. Is this event imminent, or will it happen? Will it happen at all? I'll let Emmanuel answer.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
There is such hope, is there not, in everyone's heart? Everyone who dares to hope, that is. That is not the major portion of the populace, but there is enough. There is enough. There is enough of you to hold a hope, to have become, at this moment, the critical mass that moves the world not towards the darkness, but towards the light. Do you hear? Not towards the darkness, but towards the light. I have been considered by many to be bordering on Pollyanna because of my viewpoint that love is victor. Not that it will become the victor, but it already has. But I assure you, no matter how profoundly I probe, I can see nothing else. Within individual lives, there is wondrous, wondrous, miraculous turnabouts. As you know, it has happened in your own. Within the consciousness of the world, as there seems to be these rending explosions of darkness, there is the remembering of the light. Now, I am not philosophically explaining darkness to you now. I am simply attempting to answer your question with as much vastness as I can. There have been many things predicted. Humanity is given to prediction. It gives it a sense of comfort or a modicum of the belief that one can control. It seems as though if one can see ahead a 3-day span and one can promise that there will be sunshine, that there is a sense of having empowerment. I tease you all a little, but only a little, I assure you. And so prediction is a human habit. Prediction, no matter how benign the prediction, also serves fear, and you do see how that is. If there is a willingness to trust the moment of now, need there be any other call of awakening? If there be a willingness to say yes, yes, I will simply allow life to unfold. I will choose love with every conscious moment I am able. I will follow the light wherever I see it, and I will know that in my intent, I am perfect in my intent, perhaps not in my outward deeds, but in my intent, then that is enough, that is more than enough. You walk with angels, and if you so believe that, then where can you go where you are not blessed? Where can you go where you are not bringing the blessing? Then is there a need for such changes? No, you say. They're already happening. And indeed you are right. Every moment you, dear sir, every moment you, in your daily life, take just a second, a breath, to remember who you are. Every moment when you stop the onward movement of mind, of human belief system, and say, wait, just now, I want to breathe one breath and touch eternity. Can you not see that you are already living the promised revelation? Each one of you will receive and have done so. These moments of shining truth. Each one of you are on the upward spiral of your own transformation. Each one of you walks the blessed individual path of oneness. And I know that sounds like a contradiction. It is not. And so earth changes, I would prefer to call them human changes. Consciousness changes. Awareness changes. So that, yes, certainly, is the millennium possible? It is here now. The moment you remember who you are, you have stepped into the Garden of Eden. Now the mind says, but Am I alone in the Garden of Eden? Well, you will look around and find that no, you are not. And you will look outside the Garden of Eden and you will see there are many there who have not yet found the willingness to remember, have not found the light that will bring them home, have not in some manner perceived what has been standing not only in front of them but within them from the moment of their conception, and most certainly before that time. But you ask about the human race. Do not be despairing at what seem to be, if you will, the dark holes that are developing or seem to be developing in your human world. There are, to the degree that they are visible, they are in the process of healing. What cannot be seen cannot be ministered to. You all know in your human bodies, it seems as though at times sickness can lurk. And suddenly there it is, and then you address it. But before that, who knows what to address? You are so busy running your lives in the name of fear, and I do not judge that, but it is a simple observation for all of you to make, that attention isn't drawn. For instance, loss, illness, injury, disappointment can be and has been perceived as the wake-up call. Wake up to what? Why, wake up to the truth of who you are, to what life is all about. It's not about winning. It's not about figuring out the puzzle and finding a solution. It's not about walking the safest way. It's about remembering who you are and bringing that blessed light as much as possible into the earth, here and now. And in that moment, when you are fully present, the millennium is present as well.
Okay, and I think we just about have time for one more call. Hello, WPKN, you're on the air.
Yes, hello. I'm calling with a question for Emmanuel. I, as a victim of sexual abuse in my childhood, the role of sexuality in my life has not been balanced. Mm-hmm. And I'm married, but struggling with this aspect of marriage, and I'm wondering, what is the right and healed path of sexual energy, and how do we get there?
That's a good question.
Do you want to stay on the line, or do you want to listen on the radio?
I would like to listen on the radio.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Thank you.
When one speaks of sexuality, let us for a moment consider it not only in the sexual definition, in the vocabulary of the sexual definition. Let us consider it more softly, more porously, as the voice of love. The voice of love, which of course the physical body was designed to allow it to be. Love is the life force that courses through every one of you. How debilitating its distortion can become, you already know. How painful, how destructive, how self-dishonoring, how confusing, how terrifying. And yet the essence of it, stay with me a moment, the essence of it is pure love. No matter how it manifests, the essence of it is pure love. Now, you say, what do we do with that? Well, if you were to approach a roadmap and you were to perceive that there was a beginning and a destination, and that the destination, the most hoped for, most certainly the most prayed for destination, was to allow the physical body to freely express the perfect loving of the heart. Or is that not its fundamental nature? Of course it is. Then you would see, as you are standing in the viewing platform, if you will, where you see both beginning and end, you would see that in the beginning, that force, that life force, was just as pure as the ultimate hoped for destination. So there is purity on both ends of the journey. As you began your life with the purity, with the openness, with the trust, with the faith, with the remembering of the love that called you into this life again, you were confronted with someone who was so lost in illusion that they had forgotten so profoundly who they were that they could not touch in its true form the loving that is their nature. And what had taken place was that there was a crisscrossing of the roads, if you will, since we are using the analogy of a map, and that you were involved, you became ensnared in what seemed to be their hopeless journey that seemed to have no beginning and end. And yet, I must tell you this, the essence is perfect love. Now, I don't expect a young child to say, it's all right. I'm being sexually abused. I'm terrified. I don't want to look. I don't want to breathe. I'm not sure I want to live. And yet, I know this is perfect love. The child cannot think that, but the soul does. What I am saying to you is this. There is profound pain, fear, disappointment in such an experience, but it does not alter the truth of who you are. Now, as you perceive from this slightly lifted vantage point, then the ensnaring becomes less dense, and finally it seems to go away, and you are moving along in your life, and yet it seems, you say, as though I am carrying with me that distortion, and I yearn to be free and to flow and to allow my love to be expressed through my body. And yet, you say, and yet, doors are locked, cannot find the key. Memory comes, and I do not know the memory, I only know the effect of the memory, which is to stop me, to suppress me, to freeze me, to cause me to deny my true nature. What is one to do when memory comes, not as clear memory that can be addressed, but it comes as an effect, which is a no, which is a denial, which is a misuse, if you will, of the body's purpose for expressing perfect love perfectly. What does one do? One sits with the child you were. Hold her in memory. Be the adult, the loving, the perfectly loving adult that small child yearned to have there in those moments of assault and pain. You be the one that says to that small child, no matter whether the memory is clear or not, the moment that the flow of love stops, then by all means, stop whatever is transpiring in your life and say, this time belongs to the healing of the child I was. And take that child in your arms, in your imagination, have a picture with you if it helps, and do and say whatever you know in that moment the child needs. And when you are complete, then you are complete. And go on with your life. And when, should it happen again, habit is deep, fear is an addiction in the human world, and so inevitably fear will come again. Do the same thing. Give yourself permission to be for that child the adult that was not there. This is no recrimination against parenting. It is simply how it was. And in a short while, though I cannot promise for the effort, the effect, the journey is your own. But in a short while, you will begin to see that there is a softening of the vice-like hold that past experience has upon your life. But you must remember that in those moments, you are the most important thing. It has nothing to do with anyone else. It has everything to do with your moment of healing, which is available as soon as you perceive that the flow of life has either stopped or been diverted or is causing you pain.
Thank you. You're tuned to WPKN in Bridgeport, 89.5 FM, listener-supported radio. And it was great to have you both back again.
Thank you. It was great to be here.
And I'll check in with you on schedules and see when we can do this again.
Right. I'd like that.